Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Ronald W. Chapman, and I'm the owner of Chapman Law Group, a dedicated healthcare law firm with offices in Michigan, Florida, and practicing throughout the country. Today we have with us Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris was placed on the preclusion list, and after going to another law firm that charged him $126,000 and was unable to successfully have him removed, he came to Chapman Law Group. You'll hear him say that because of our empathy, because of our understanding and specific dedication to healthcare law, we were able to have him removed from the preclusion list within 3 months. Today he is actively practicing, enrolled with Medicare Advantage, Medicare, Medicaid, and other private insurance carriers, doing what he loves to do, which is take care of patients. So Dr. Harris, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, sir.
Why don't you first tell our audience a little bit about your background, where you practice, because it's a little bit unique.
Yes, sir. I am a board certified internal medicine specialist. I practice in North Central Ohio, a little town called Bucyrus. It's primarily Medicare, probably 65% Medicare, the rest cash. It's also somewhat core. We have a pretty high Medicaid as well, probably 25% or so. So they're very much in, actually, health manpower shortage area as well. So it's a very, very dependent on the doctors. There aren't that many of us here. Furthermore, I am not owned. So I am truly, which is very rare. I am a doctor. I don't have a nurse practitioner. I am a solo doctor. I've been practiced 23 years.
A good part of your practice is Medicare Advantage plan?
Medicare Advantage plans probably make up about 25% of my Medicare recipients.
Okay. Do you also see Medicare patients aside from Medicare Advantage?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So a good part of your practice is involved with government payers, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, Medicare Advantage, those types of programs?
If you include Medicare and Medicaid in my practice, it's probably 60% of my practice, or excuse me, was 60% of my practice.
And in order to work with all of those billing or payer entities, you need to be credentialed through CMS, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And now at some point in time, there's a re-enrollment process where your credentialing lasts for so many years and then you have to re-enroll. At some point in time, a few years ago, did you engage in that re-enrollment process?
Yes, sir. It's termed revalidation. Yes, sir, I did.
And as part of that, as most people use, I think you would have your your medical assistant go to the computer and do it online, right?
My office manager did it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us about what that process was, because that process led us to where we are today.
Well, yeah. Well, prior to this cycle, the 2018 cycle, I had done everything on paper. And my manager decided she wanted to try to do electronic. Maybe a bit premature. She didn't really tell me she was doing electronic until I received my letter revoking my privileges. So anyway, it's a heck of a time to find out. But she was trying to do the right thing, the thing that CMS wanted to do. So as a result, we should have filled out the application online, electronically, and then we were forced to mail the paper documentation they needed because we were unable to upload those files. Their software, their website, whatever, didn't accept the format that we could scan our files into. As I said, I'm not throwing blame at anybody. You know, it happens, right? She didn't tell me she was doing that. Otherwise, I could have made that switch very easily and maybe saved this outcome. But that's where the process began. A little bit of naivety.
So in this particular process, your manager goes online, she starts to fill out the application. The application is asking for certain documents. So she stops filling out the application, grabs those documents together. So you sort of have an incomplete application that's somewhere in the internet on the computer.
That would be correct.
And then you prepare all the documentation you needed, you put it together, and it's sent off to the contractor. In this case, it wasn't direct to CMS. You were going through a local contractor that does the re-enrollment.
Yeah, the Ohio area is done
validation.
by CGS, correct. And
Okay.
she sent the CGS.
Now, a very unique thing happened. The contractor took that application, and there were some sections that weren't filled out yet. And one of those sections were, have you had any adverse actions? Have you had any adverse actions with medical boards, et cetera? And I don't want to go into this, but you had had an issue with the Ohio Medical Board years before that you knew that you need to continually notify people that, yeah, I had this, even though it's over and done, right?
That'd be correct, sir.
But in this case, that box wasn't checked because your manager didn't complete the application. You didn't even sign it, did you?
Yeah, we never got what's sort of concerning about that process. And by the way, Ron, they can't do that anymore. You can't send paper and do an online application. That's not there anymore. And ironically, that changed 3 months after my issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe they realized there was a problem there. But yeah, that's where we stood.
So then, lo and behold, you get in the mail a notification that your enrollment in CMS has now been terminated because CMS believes that you fraudulently completed the application.
Yeah, they actually accused me of Medicare fraud and told me effective February the 16th that I would be barred from Medicare for 3 years.
And the first time you heard about that is when you got the letter. Were you quite surprised because you said, hey, I never even signed the application. I never officially sent it through.
Well, I mean, that's what's interesting and also somewhat concerning. The form that I had to sign, number one, I did sign it because my manager, I thought she was doing everything paper, and that's the way it was. That's what you did. You signed that paper. Usually I signed that, then she filled the application out. I would review the application and then we would mail it. That didn't occur. So it was my signature, but ironically on the signature page, it's not notarized. So if a manager wanted to hamstring a doctor, she could just write his name.
Okay. But in this case, everybody was kind of working on good faith.
Yeah.
When you looked further into this,
Yes, sir.
the issue CMS had is they said, hey, you had a prior action with the Ohio board. And instead of saying yes and identifying what that action was, you checked no, and you said, hold on, I didn't check no, neither did my office manager, nobody checked no. So how did the no get checked?
That's exactly right, sir. Yeah, actually, when I received my letter, Ron, my manager has done stuff before that stuff was prematurely done that way, and I could call the insurance and say, hey, look, open it back up, let me finish the application, all right? So this wasn't the first time this had happened, but recall, I didn't know what was going on. I was seeing patients, it was a Friday, and I told her that I would address it when I got through. She said, we got something from Medicare. She was white as a ghost, and I said, well, I'll look at it. And after hours, we stayed there. I looked at it and read it and went, wow, what happened? I said, did you submit anything? She says, no. She said, I just sent those forms in. So we called the number on the letter and we said, hey, look, that the application is complete. Mind you, my application wasn't even due until the end of February. Okay, that was the due time.
Did they allow you to change it?
No.
No.
It was locked out. I was locked out of PCOs. But that day, I was able to access PCOs, but I couldn't get into it. All I could do was do a print screen from what was there. And what was there was my incomplete application, which you've seen. All right. And in that application, it actually says no data provided. It doesn't say no.
So from that point, you then contacted your insurance carrier to see if they could help you?
No, not that point, because I thought it was a simple error. I thought they would be reasonable. I mean, I had the data. I sent a copy of my screenshot, but I couldn't type and paste it. I couldn't do anything. All I could do was do a screen print. I sent a copy of that along with a letter trying to explain the situation. I don't even think they read my appeal, to be honest with you. They basically said, you forgot to put data here. You had access to the website. And I didn't. I was locked out. I was locked. The first time I looked at that website, I was locked out. I couldn't do anything. And at that point, when I saw the negativity there, which I finally received that letter in April the 24th. Mind you, I'd already been in contact with my congressman. I'd already been in contact with, I'm pretty politically active in Ohio, so I already been in contact with the Ohio State Medical Association, the Ohio Osteopathic Association, even the AOA. I tried to figure out what was going on, because at that point, until April, I had no idea what happened. I had no idea how it got submitted. I had no idea whatsoever.
Very much in April, you learned that you had a 3-year enrollment bar.
Well, no, I knew that was coming in February, but I was, I happened to go to the Ohio Osteopathic Symposium, which was in Columbus, Ohio. And one of the booths there was CGS for CMS. And ironically, the lady that was at the booth was the same lady that signed my letter telling me I was going to be barred. And I went over to the table and looked at her and she said, I said, I'm having a little problem with you guys right now. She's like, well, what's going on? I said, I got a letter saying I'm barred from Medicare for 3 years. Quote unquote, what the heck did you do? I said, it's an application error. And I explained the process. And she, first off, she said there's not really much she can do. It has to go through the process, the administrative process, right? And she definitely told me that I should appeal it. But basically, she said when my manager mailed those forms in the mail, when CGS received those forms, they assumed that the application was complete and they processed it. So that is what submitted my application.
But the application was complete, but the box wasn't checked. So somebody checked the box to say that you've had no problems, correct?
No, what they did with the box, Ron, is it says yes or no. And so the copy I had on the PICO site said no data provided. The copy that was provided to me in July, because of them uploading documents to the administrative law judge website, I was able to actually see those. It doesn't say no data provided anymore. It says no. So the answer was changed from no data provided to no.
So once you knew of this problem, you talked to some various associations and things. At some point in time, you contacted your malpractice carrier and you ended up getting referred to an attorney.
Yes, sir, I did.
And I think you were telling me, which was kind of shocked before you came to our office, that you spent $126,000 with that law firm to get nothing.
Well, I guess they put together my brief, they submitted my brief. They were my representative. They did the brief, and they also did the I guess the appeal. No, it's not really appeal, redetermination request on my preclusion list that I received, my letter that I received in August. Now, mind you, whenever you get these things, there's actually two things. So the letter that I received in January 17th was to me personally, Roy Harris, okay? Apparently, there was another letter that was sent to Bucyrus Internal Medicine that I never received. I didn't have access to that one until having the information uploaded from July. Those letters are not sent certified.
So this law firm that you were referred to by your insurance carrier,
yes,
charged you $126,000, and they filed a redetermination, which they lost, correct?
Correct. We lost a redetermination on the preclusion list on both parties, Bucyrus Internal Medicine and Roy Harris.
So now you're on the preclusion list, which basically means that you cannot bill Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, any government program. And that has a cascading effect, because once you're on the preclusion list for a government program, then most private carriers start knocking you off their programs. It's almost a mandatory knockoff. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, what actually happens is the letter is that you're going to be placed on the preclusion list in 6 months, because that's the length of time you have to appeal, to file an appeal for that process, all right? And please remember this, on all those orders, on the Medicare bar, on the preclusion list, there is absolutely no way to get a stay on those orders. which is very important, right? Very, very important. So it would have been effective January the 1st. They were going to put me on the preclusion list. Per the contracts of the insurance companies, they gave me 4 months after that before I was actually officially rejected from the plans. So I lost my insurance plans April the 1st of 2019.
And then at some point in time, you came to Chapman Law Group.
Yeah, well, what happened with that was that would have been, when did that happen? I'd say when I received my, because I got the notice that my redetermination had been denied, okay? At that point, I think it was in February, my stepson and my wife had done some research and they found your firm. Actually, they found your lawyer, right? Or she was actually on the website. And we found out that she worked for your firm. And so we called your firm because at that point, I was actually almost angry because it appeared that somebody had changed my application, and it couldn't have been me because I was locked out of PICOs, like you so well put. I mean, somebody changed the data on that application, and that cost me a lot of heartache. Originally, I wanted to sue CGS for about $1.5 million.
So when you came to Chapman Law Group, at this point in time, your redetermination had been denied. You're now on the exclusion list. You're barred for 3 years. Most of your insurance carriers have now dropped you.
Yes, sir.
And you're basically living off savings.
Well, yeah, actually, it was worse than that. I had to lend my company money to operate.
Okay.
So my firm was living off of my savings.
Yeah. And then you came to us and we filed an appeal.
What you did was I fired in February, all right, because it was getting nowhere. And what they were doing, which was quite concerning, is she was having like 5 or 6 lawyers on a call for I don't know what, and so I'd be charged for the hourly amount on both of those. I simply couldn't afford that kind of outlay, and that's a lot of money for a single doctor. And so I dismissed them in February. Right after I dismissed them, they gave me another bill for $24,000. So at that point, I'd already been in contact with your firm regarding litigation against CGS. Okay, very hard to find a firm that wants to litigate CGS, not CMS. I would never sue the government, right? But CGS, because that's where the processing of the claim went, and that's when I became involved with your firm. When I dismissed, now I had to have somebody do an appeal on the preclusion side. Okay. And so we had 2 separate cases with you. We had the one with the CGS issue, and we had one with the preclusionless side. And that's really when I became more involved in the process.
Let me stop you there for a second. So you say your stepson and your wife found Chapman Law Group. Chapman Law Group is a dedicated healthcare law firm. You came to us to potentially sue the contractor for incorrectly checking the box, which started this whole problem. And then you asked us also now to file the appeal with CMS, which in your own research, what's the probability of winning an appeal with CMS?
Very low.
Very little.
Very low. And actually the other aspect is even more worrisome than that is it could take up to 8 years to get a decision.
And then you got some good news. Here, I believe, let's see, this is June. I believe it was in May. April. And what was that news?
You called me. I was outside messing with my garden, and you called me and told me that CMS had contacted
you. And they contacted us and they agreed to reinstate you as long as you dismissed your appeal.
Well, not reinstate me. They agreed to pull me off preclusion.
Well, they
allow me to
moved you off the preclusion list, and you reapplied to get reinstated.
Re-enroll, yeah, yes. Yes.
What did you think about that? What did you think when you got called? Did you expect us to be able to do that? Did you expect any lawyer to be able to now beat CMS?
Well, something that was really important. The whole time we were going through this litigation, I was beating the snot out of my senators and my representatives. I got to know Jim Jordan quite well. Actually, ironically, his chief aide, I took care of his mother. So I had like an in there a little bit. And so they were beating on CMS, and the last point they started beating on the White House. But actually, ironically, Senator Sherrod Brown's assistant was the one I was talking to the most, and actually she believed me. All right, she believed the process, and so she stayed on them to try to figure out where my appeal was. And I called her up and I would ask her how many are outstanding, and as of I think it was March, maybe March, middle of March, I called her. They had over 700,000 cases pending to the ALJ. It was absolutely nuts. She said I was in the 400,000 range, so I was coming up. I'm like, well, I'm not sure what that meant. And if you recall, actually, your firm, they combined everything into one. They took my appeal that I had from my letter, my original letter in January 18th, which at that term, you were not representing me for that. I was without representation on that because there's nothing to do. He said sit and wait. So I waited for that. So they combined that and the preclusion list appeals all into one. And so now you were my man. Now you were my firm. So you were representing me in that way. But I had called probably about 2 weeks before you got your letter and talked to her. And I explained to her that due to this COVID crisis, that if I had to go to the hospital and work, I would not be able to. That if something happened where they lost their docs there and they needed a doctor to come in and manage events, which I can do, I would not be allowed on hospital property because Medicare forbid me. And they forbid anybody that gets Medicare funding to work with me. It's like you're poison. And she said, well, I'm going to call CMS again. And she did. Now, I don't think I told you this, but probably the next day, she wrote me back and says, CMS wants to know your MPI. So at that point, I sort of had a feeling something was happening. Before that, I don't even think they looked at my appeal. And I believe probably the next day, you called me.
Okay. And so how are things today? We're 2 months post, 3 months post. How are things today?
Well, actually, it would have been better if they reinstated me. It's sort of ridiculous to reappeal because they had everything. They've already vetted me. Ironically, I probably got approved the fastest history in America because actually I put my application in on my birthday, May the 12th. I think there was something missing. They wrote me an email on the 13th asking me for something. Ron, I was approved on May 18th. They approved me.
What about the private insurance carriers? Have you been reinstated with them?
I've applied for them about the same time. In fact, I actually got letters when I was taken off the preclusion list in May. I got a letter from several insurance companies saying you can reapply, which again is sort of interesting because according to Medicare, it never happened.
Okay.
It's no blemish on my record whatsoever. You know what? That's huge. That's huge. I got Medicare fraud taken off my record, and that's absolutely huge. That's why ultimately, as you know, I tried to negotiate. They didn't want to negotiate, but it still stood, and we decided to go ahead and take their offer.
And so today, it's been a nightmare for 2 years, but you're back practicing, back seeing the patients, back treating them, back being a doctor and helping.
Right. They honored their contract. They reinstated me back to April. So anything I billed from April 10th forward, they paid for. Unfortunately, the insurance company's coming around. I just signed a contract for United. I just signed a contract for Humana. So, pending my approval by their board, then it should be good to go.
What were some of the good things, or one of the good things, or any of the good things that you can tell others? Let's say, first of all, between dealing with a healthcare attorney or a healthcare law firm like Chapman Law Group,
yes,
and some other firm that maybe does a lot of medical malpractice defense and that kind of stuff, but they really don't know healthcare law. Was there a difference? Did you see a difference in how we dealt with you versus they did?
Oh, it's huge. I don't know. I mean, I think your firm's fairly big because you're in several states. Okay. Huge. I mean, they're in Washington, Chicago, and people think bigger is better. It's not. Tremendous amount of left hand not knowing what the right hand was. And honestly, I felt like I was a money machine. Thought I was the Fed there, whoever was printing money to give them out. But, you were, and more than that, I was pretty angry because I thought I'd been dissed. And some people can feed into that, and it's not really good to be angry with a lawyer. I'm not at the lawyer, but angry with a lawyer, because they can burn up a lot of money. And your firm directed me like, hey, cool it, you don't need to worry about that. That's not possible. You told me what to expect, and you told me what works and what doesn't work. You were very honest to me. You could have just said, yeah, we'll pursue that and billed me a bunch of hours. You didn't do that. Your company was very fair to me. That's the whole process is about, Ron, it's about being fair. That's why I was so upset with CGS. I didn't think I was being treated fairly. Still don't, but it is what it is. And the nice part is I don't have that blemish on my record anymore.
And in the end, sometimes we have to make compromises. I know you really want to sue CGS. We counseled you that that probably wasn't a good idea. You're reinstated now. You're off the preclusion list. Just continue to do the things that you love to do, which is practice medicine. And life is kind of back to a little bit normal. You got a lot of money to make up, but life's back to normal.
I think I'll ever make it back. I mean, there's been a lot of interesting things happen because of COVID-19, the losses I took in 2018, which were I think my company lost $156,000 that year. I can actually take that back, so that's going to help me a little bit in my tax money. I'll get some of it back, but I want to pay myself back, of course, because that was my retirement, and just get things back. But what I love to do is excuse me.
I said, and you're in an underserved area. You
yes,
pretty
sir.
much are helping people that are underserved medically.
That's why I continue to see people in 2018. I couldn't drop these people; they had nowhere to go. I mean, I had, people's lives are in my hands. I take what I do very seriously, and they supported me. They'd rather pay me $50 than go see somebody that's a Medicare person, to take care of them.
Before we leave today,
yes,
what advice can you give maybe a physician, anybody that's credentialed with CMS, when they receive these kinds of letters, when these things happen, about where they should turn, what kind of lawyer they can find? Any advice to them?
Oh, absolutely. I will tell you one more thing I didn't tell you. I only ever told your company this because remember I got involved with you later on in the process for other reasons. But anyway, I did send a certified letter to CGS, to the president and CEO, and also to the executive secretary, telling them what happened to me and telling them that after I finished the appeal process, I was coming after. My attorney, which is for the AOA, named Yolanda, she said that had a lot to do with it too. She said your ducks were in a row and they knew it. They knew you weren't, that something was going to happen. So I think that actually happened too. As far as finding your law firm, I wish I would have found your law firm sooner. I could actually almost guarantee that the amount of money that I had in coverage to cover the litigation would have probably covered your entire amount we paid you. You're extremely fair as far as your charges are concerned. I don't think you tried to run the charges up. I think you got a big feather in your hat because you got a doctor that fought CMS and won. And I think you need to put that out there. It's just it's been a process. You worked with me. You didn't abandon me, and that's what's important. I think you actually knew what I was going through, and more important than that, you believed. All right, and that means a lot. I'm very much into trust.
Well, that's important. I started Chapman Law Group 35 years ago because I believe in the struggle that physicians have. I think at the basic heart of a physician, they simply want to help people. They have a helping, caring heart. They want to help people feel better, less pain, get over their injuries and stuff like that. In the bureaucracy that CMS, that the government, that healthcare providers creates, is just unimaginable. And most physicians, they're more concerned with the patient than they are with the back end of the operation, to making sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted. And we came in to, to help them. I tell a lot of people, we represent a lot of people that have been charged criminally for fraud and other things. Sure. And I firmly believe this, 90% of our clients, they do not know that they did anything wrong. They were not out to defraud anybody. And they just did what they thought was right, and it turned out to be wrong in the eyes of the government. And that just breaks my heart every time I see that, because they're not criminals. The government's going to treat them like that, but they're not. In your case, you weren't a criminal. You did not commit fraud, which has huge implications. You're paying off all carriers. You're like a pariah to the industry then.
Yeah, the rest of my life.
Yeah. And in this case, it had to do with nothing that you did.
Yeah.
Except
I was literally barred 3 years for an application error.
Yeah.
And there are people that get barred 1 year for truly defrauding the government by possibly selling wheelchairs, by doing all sorts of stuff 1 year. I got 3 for an application error.
Now, the other thing that I think all of this teaches us, and I guess this is one other thing we can tell physicians and doctors that are maybe viewing this, is when you're filling out applications for credentialing, when you're filling out applications to be licensed in a state, to be credentialed with CMS or Blue Cross or whatever that might be, it is imperative that every answer be absolutely true, because the consequences of checking the wrong box, most of these providers, most of these contractors immediately jump to fraud.
Well, yeah,
this was
they say you provided false information to a government official, right? And so you're where Flint is. And you know what? The costs were exactly the same. While all that crap was going on, I was going through the same thing. I could relate to them because they were going through the same administrative process.
Sure. Well, Dr. Harris, I want to thank you for joining us today. I think our viewers can learn a lot from your experience, and hopefully they can see that Chapman Law Group, we're dedicated to helping healthcare providers. We have 16 attorneys and we're growing, and that's all we do. We don't do anything other than help healthcare providers in various facets of providing healthcare. So thank you very much, and thank you for being willing to do this.
My pleasure, sir. If you need anything, any kind of testimony, if people want to call me, I mean, like I said, there aren't many doctors that know this stuff. Like you said, we're not taught this stuff in medical school.
Sure.
You're exactly right. You have to watch your application process. I did all my application process for commercial. I'm a small businessman too. I own this place, but I had delegated some of my stuff because I can't do everything. I'm not Superman.
Sure.
And at this point, yeah, I do everything for that.
Absolutely.
You're exactly correct.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, sir.